Welcome to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us for another edition of DAX Machina. Joining me in the studio tonight is Robbie Rip Rains, my co-host and host of What's Really Out There. You guys should check out that podcast. And, of course, we've got Steve Wildman Monrotis, Mr. Steve's Pub and Grub himself, for those of you who are familiar with the books. Steve and I started this little channel on a wing and a prayer about 2 years ago, and we're really kind of enjoying where this ride is taking us. And we have a very special guest tonight. Those of you familiar with the channel Abnormal Investigation, is rapidly becoming one of my favorite channels out there. There's so much great content, and I like the way that Mike investigates. So hopefully everybody will give us a big welcome to Mike Steven from Abnormal Investigations. Mike, thank you for being here, bud.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, we're happy to have you here. Tonight, folks, we're going to be digging into a mystery that's from right here in the Ozarks. It happened down near Tulsa, Oklahoma, back in 1977. And this is a bizarre case that has really kind of confounded investigators. Well, since it happened, it's the incident that happened was when 3 young Girl Scouts at a Girl Scout camp called Camp Scott. It was again down near Tulsa, Oklahoma. Were mysteriously murdered. They were violently sexually assaulted and murdered. The case took as many bizarre turns as you could possibly take. They do believe that the person responsible was brought to justice, although he was acquitted in trial, but later died. He was already supposed to be in prison for, I think it was 307 years or something like that. He'd only served like 2 years of that. He still has served like 305 years of his remaining sentence, but he'd been on the run since 1973 when he escaped from the Department of Corrections. So he'd been on the run for 4 years before this even happened. That's just a really good starting point for where this story takes a bizarre turn. Mike, do you want to jump in on this, and I'll let you kind of give the background. You have done far more research on this than I have, and I'm just scratching the surface.
It went everywhere from rumors around town to the sheriff's wife having an affair with him, to council members being involved, to the children being set up to be sacrificed. Leroy Hart, they said, was set up. The town folk down there even came together. They had like almost the whole town was backing him, which whenever they even had the trial, the family felt unsafe even going to the trial. Just a lot of different, even black magic, shape-shifting, skinwalkers, all documented by federal agents, local law enforcement, sheriff's department, state police. Just there was so many different avenues it could have went, and then some things that they tried to leave out that finally leaked out.
But in the way that took off, I mean, the crime scene, the way it was investigated was botched. The way the sheriff's department handled the entire investigations, like you and I were talking about before we went live, certain bits of evidence were just completely ignored. I'm amazed they were able to put together any kind of prosecution at all. However, having said that, the guy should have still already been in jail. But it's weird how he was like almost this folk hero among the people around there.
A local shaman said that he had started practicing forbidden magic. He was one of the ones that actually held him up at his house whenever they eventually did find him, whenever they were looking for him. Gene said he was able to shapeshift into a cat, an owl, and a black dog. The black dog was actually photographed while they were doing the investigation several times. It was posted. They used a picture of it. The investigator was there. He said that he was sitting in a chair one night and was actually attacked by the black cat. It was actually documented. And whenever Gene Leroy Hart was actually questioned after he had been caught, he said, "I watched you all from above and below." And there was a lot of weird things that went on through the whole case. Even just, 22 officers retired after that investigation. 22 seasoned officers because of the shape that one of the little girls' bodies was in.
Yeah, it absolutely destroyed some of those officers. They wanted, they walked away from their careers after that. One thing I found the most interesting, and it was funny you mentioned the black dog, is even though that camp has been closed for decades and it's private property now, you're not allowed to get back on there. People that live in that area still report seeing that black dog.
That's not creepy at all.
Yeah, I talked to
No, not at all.
Yeah, the owners, I've heard, will let you on there if you contact them. I'm in the process of getting in contact with them to be able to get access to the property. That's the next thing that I'm actually wanting to do.
Well,
But
if you do, let me know, because I'm not that far from Tulsa.
Okay, yeah, sure. We'll go up there together.
I'd love to come.
It's
I'd love
a
to
pretty
go with
rough
you.
area.
Well, I'm
It's a rough
I'm not
area.
opposed to
They're
hiking
not
back
real
in there.
kind.
Weird connection though. I find that they always talk about the degrees of separation from a story. I just found this out today. The inmate that turned evidence against Hart, that claimed he had confessed while in prison, the inmate that was set to testify against him was a guy named Jimmy Don Bunch, and Jimmy Don Bunch was actually a frequent flyer here in the jail here in Springfield where I worked. And my old lieutenant used to have to deal with that guy when he first started his career. And I guess Bunch was as crazy as it gets, like assault staff every chance he got. Constantly fighting, just absolute nuts. And if they used his testimony, it's probably no reason why they've had a unanimous not guilty verdict.
Right. And I think there was more than Leroy Hart involved in it. I would even speculate that some of the camp members were involved, and even possibly Carla Wilhite would have been a prime suspect to me if I would have been doing it with the information that I have received and that I've gathered.
Well,
I would agree with that. Steve, what were you going to say?
Well, it seems to me just that these are, older grade school girls, right? Like 8, 9,
and 10, the three girls.
10 years old. I can't imagine any of them going quietly. And then when you consider the horrible things that were done to these girls, I can hardly see how this could happen at a camp without raising.
Well, supposedly they heard screams and didn't respond.
Yeah, this goes deeper than just your normal. I mean, not
The
this
girls,
case.
the girls were found 150 yards from their tent, so it's not far. No, what are you gonna say, Robbie? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was just gonna say that not that this is a normal case by any stretch of the imagination, but even throwing the supernatural, paranormal stuff out of it, there's a lot of stuff in this case that just you and I and Steve and Mike, from the law enforcement standpoint, there's just a lot of weird stuff that. Why was the investigation done the way it was done? I mean, I know you alluded to some of that stuff, Steve, but it's just, or Mike, I'm sorry, it's just, this stuff is just as from the law enforcement standpoint, just makes you scratch your head and go.
Well, in '77, they really didn't have the technology to do DNA, so they didn't really take caution to collect that the way it should have been collected. And by the time the technology evolved where they could collect it and sample it, it had degraded to the point it was almost useless.
Yeah. Well, DNA degrades quickly. And didn't the DNA evidence basically tell them that, what they found was, could have been like a 1 in 7,700.
Yeah,
Native
1 in
American
7,700, I believe it was.
Yeah, at the risk of stirring up the plot here, is it at all possible that because the suspect was Native American, that there might have been some kind of a bias in how they process things?
It could have been. Christy Crawford says, how was the crime scene messed up? Evidence wasn't handled properly. Some evidence that could have alluded to the presence of other people were ignored completely. Some of the key evidence they used that claimed Hart was directly involved was questionable at best. Like, for example, Mike, you want to explain about the picture?
Yeah, they had a picture that was found in a cave that they believed Hart had stayed in, where they had found 4 small fires, which was ritualistic at the time for him to have done. They said rituals, as far as shape shifting and stuff. But the picture it was found, it was entered into evidence in court. And actually, one of the sheriff's deputies testified that he had saw the same picture in the sheriff's drawer 2 years prior to it being placed at the cave. And then allegations came out later that the sheriff's wife had an affair with Mr. Hart, and that there was animosity between the sheriff and Mr. Hart,
which immediately compromises the entire investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And then also inside the tent where they collected the DNA, OSBI and the sheriff's department had a discrepancy between. They found Mr. Hart's DNA, but then they also found the DNA of a female and also a footprint on the outside of the tent that the OSBI did not want released to the public, that was released by the newspaper. And the newspaper was bashed pretty hard over releasing that footprint. It was later dropped and never brought back up. They said it was irrelevant to the case.
Well, one of the things that first connected them to Hart in the first place was what had put Hart in prison before when he escaped, was that he had abducted and sexually assaulted 2 pregnant women and left them for dead, although they both survived. But the weird thing about it was he took their glasses, and he had this weird fetish for glasses. He would always take people's glasses and put them on, and the same thing happened at the Girl Scout camp. Several pairs of glasses had come up missing. There was even a warning that it was supposed to happen. One of the camp counselors went into her tent a few days before the event and opened a box of donuts. The donuts were gone, and there was a note in there. I'm going to kill three Girl Scouts. I'm not sure if I'm 100% on the wording of that, but to the effect of that he is planning to kill 3 Girl Scouts, and it was ignored and thought it was a joke.
Yeah, it said we are on a mission to kill 3 Girl Scouts, and
we being
which would make
the
you
key
think
word.
more than one. Yes, that's what I caught on to also. And you know what really bothered me about the case is on a dark, stormy night. It was storming that night. Carla Wilhite said that she had looked out and saw a dim light in the woods that was moving through the woods. So she shines her flashlight on this dim light, and every time she does it, the dim light turns out. So she goes to investigate, and she hears this weird noise that she said is not human, a guttural sound or whatever. And so she gets scared and goes back to her tent and sees the light later over by the 3 little girls where they were murdered, which the tent was blocked by the shower house. There were the 3 youngest girls at the camp. There's supposed to be 4 girls in each tent. Somehow there was a mess up. 3 girls were put in the furthest out tent that could not be seen from the where the adults were at the staff. They were blocked by the showers, the darkest area. There's 3 girls in there. The note says we're on a mission to kill 3. Carla Wilhite sees a flashlight, sees it turn off as she shines her light on it, sees it move over to that area. She hears those noises that she said is not human. She was afraid, but she goes in and lays down and goes to sleep.
Yeah. To me, it almost seems like she might have been involved.
That don't exactly.
Well, they said she was dating.
Somebody used to say.
They said she was dating what? Mike, what did you say?
Hart, that he was.
She was dating Hart.
They said that.
Nice.
Yeah, that was the rumor going around town. And what was even worse about it is after she laid down to go to sleep, the counselors and members in the other tent said they heard a little girl scream, I want my mom, and nobody went and checked. And they're talking about hearing these guttural noises, that they're hearing. And my thought is what they heard was those little girls that had those ropes wrapped around their throats. That's what they were hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to strangle somebody quietly.
Yeah, and alone. Well, for
Yeah.
one person to control and strangle three small kids. I know when my boys were pretty close in age when they were 8, 9, and 10 in that ballpark. They were like little velociraptors. I'd try to wrestle with them and they'd take me down because you just can't handle three wiry kids that small by yourself. And I can tell you from firsthand trying to wrestle down three little boys. Not an easy task.
Well,
And
then they're not trying to save their lives either.
no, and they're not fighting for their lives.
Yeah.
No.
Did you read much?
So
Do you all know anything about Jimmy Bryan? Have you read about him?
the name sounds familiar. What about him?
Jimmy Bryan. He was Travis's. It was Travis Bryan's son. Him and a bunch of boys were over at his house, and they were talking inside the front room of his father's house. Jimmy was later murdered. His father believes he was murdered to shut him up. And the reason he believes that is because the father said that whenever they were over at the house and they were watching the news, Carla Wilhite, was shown on the news, and the boy said, "Oh, we know her." And he said he had noticed that one of the kids that was at his house that had stayed all night was wearing a particular set of shoes that had tread on them that he had never seen before. He said it was almost like car tire tread. And he said whenever he seen it on the news and saw inside that cave, he said, "I knew them boys were involved because it was the same shoe prints on the boys that were in his house." And then later, the boys were going around town saying that they were involved in the murder, that they were helping James Leroy Hart get his sacrifices, and they were following him trying to become, shapeshifters.
And none of this was ever investigated. That is.
It was turned
insane.
in, but Sheriff Weaver didn't follow up with it. He was too busy trying to lay it all on Leroy.
Yeah, he sounds like he had already decided who he wanted to go after and didn't want to hear any evidence to the contrary. And unfortunately, that did happen, and it probably still does in some places. But that's as a cop, that's why I always tried to make my theory fit the evidence, not the evidence fit my theory. And unfortunately, some of the old school guys, especially, would decide, I know who did this, and didn't matter what evidence they got presented, they only looked at what took them to their goal. And it's unfortunate, but it is true. One thing that I found really bizarre about this is when they brought in tracking dogs to track him. They received a warning that the dogs were going to die, and one of them did.
Yeah, the shaman, he walked past the dogs and raised his hand out over them and told them that the dogs would die. And one dog did. I think it ran into traffic, and that's how it died. One of the dogs would die. But the little girl, and if you have any kids in the room, they probably want to remove the kids for this. But one of the little girls that was in the sleeping bag, she was so violently twisted up. Something or someone had her, and just totally, just the way she was twisted was way unnatural. Even the seasoned detectives had trouble with it. They said they was in sleeping bags that were for children, and she was so wadded up in the bottom of the sleeping bag that there was room at the bottom. And when they unzipped her, they said it was a terrible sight.
So there, just from the little bit that I know, obviously this guy was involved some, but he didn't act alone. I think we can all agree on that. Unless there was something just that we don't know yet. But it sounds like you said, the sheriff already had his mind made up before he even started this investigation that he was going to pin it on this guy, regardless of, and this guy alone. So,
well, don't get me wrong. I think that guy was involved.
Yeah,
I think he did this, but I don't think he did it alone.
but the sheriff pinned it on him by himself. So,
And when it went to trial, he had a unanimous decision that he was not guilty.
do we think the sheriff knew called and just covered it up? Like he was just like, because of all the like the rumors you said about the wife or whatever, that he was just so that this guy was. There was evidence to show this guy, and he was just like, okay, I'm gonna screw this guy. He did, and he just, conspiracy 1 or conspiracy 2, they're both bad no matter what happened. But do we think he purposely hid somebody else, or he found that guy and he already had a bone to pick with him, and he just went after him and just overlooked everything because of that?
Mike, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and also I think that if his wife did allegedly have an affair with him, there would be that animosity, and also James Leroy Hart escaped twice from that sheriff's jail, also, so he had embarrassed him, and I think he made it personal, and making it personal, he didn't follow the steps that were necessary to find all the evidence and all the suspects that would have been involved. Because I had a strong feeling since I started looking at the case that Carla Wilhite was either involved. He knows who was involved at the least. You don't hear something that's unnatural to you in the woods in a rainy, stormy night that sounds like a monster that you're not sure what it is, and go lay down and go to sleep in a tent.
Especially when you're supposed to be watching over children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
If I'd have been a camp counselor at that, one of the adults would have been awake at all times. We'd have rotated like we did fire guard in the Army. One of us at all times would have been wandering those tents.
That reads like a Friday the 13th script. Camp counselors not watching their kids.
Right.
I mean,
ranks right up there with running through the woods in high heels.
Yeah.
Miss Naoma from Naoma Open It Out says. Miss Naoma says, it's my understanding that the deputy who testified about the photograph was immediately discredited as having his own grudge against the sheriff. There's a lot of weird stuff about this case. There were just so many weird angles on this. Mike, what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No, I was just, whenever that area up there is a predominantly Indian area. And if you're not Indian, it's dangerous for you to be up there. You're not welcomed. It's not a place where you're going to be welcomed. It's a rough place. They still practice the old ways. It's a really tight knit community. He was, like you said, unanimously, he was innocent. He was brought in and brought out. When he was arrested, the glasses he's wearing when he was arrested was from one of the victims. And he still walked out innocent.
Yeah, how does that happen? And in that area, I don't think they were going to find a jury that was going to convict him. They should have got that out of that area on a change of venue, because I don't think they were going to get an unbiased jury in that whole area. Like you said, he was kind of a folk hero to the people in the area. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I remember one of the things I was watching, one of the documentaries I watched about this. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Wasn't some of the federal prosecutors, federal investigators, kind of mired down until they brought in a shaman of their own?
That's actually how they caught him. The shaman that they brought in used what he called tracking magic, and whenever they did him down, said that he had reached down and tapped the bottom of his feet, and one of the investigators asked him, he said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm taking the magic back." And whenever he had done that, because they had seen supernatural things that was reported. They were chasing him one time. These are federal agents. And they said as he was running, he goes behind this tree, and they see this owl fly away. And when they go back there, he's gone. He's not there. And they was chasing him another time, and they say he turned into a dog. And it was all documented. Just a lot. And the pole at the tent, one of the large wooden poles, it had fingerprints on it, bloody fingerprints where something had grabbed it and snapped it. And they said the amount of force that would take to be broke like that, there was no way that a normal human done it. And one of the OSBI agents actually used the terms, whatever done this was unhuman. And they tried to get him to redact his statement. He would not redact his statement.
Well, one of the things I find really compelling about this is when you look at the victims involved in this, and you look at the use of the Native American magic, and you talk about even the federal investigators documented him changing shapes. To me, this seems like almost like a skinwalker ritual to become a skinwalker.
They talked about that being the 4 fires in the cave. The shamans in the area said that he had went to another shaman and they had shown him what a magic that the forbidden magic that they did not use no more. James Leroy Hart supposedly got a hold of it and started practicing it and became this shapeshifter, this protector of the woods. And he was a hero in the town. I mean, he was a protector. And there was no way they were ever going to get a conviction on him in that town. He was, I mean, you can look at the newspaper whenever they're bringing him to court and everything. He's a hero. I mean, people were standing outside to cheer him on.
Well, and if nothing else, if he was well known in this community and he was known to have that kind of, magic or whatever you want to call it, I would think that anybody who knew him would be scared to death of him.
That's exactly what I was about to say, Steve. I said, I bet you a lot of it was hero, but I bet you just as much of it was, I ain't gonna testify against him. I ain't gonna convict him because they were scared.
Well, he was still under indictment for a 305-year commitment to the Department of Corrections. So it's not like he was free. Well, even though when he was acquitted, he went back to prison. He died 2 years later, almost within like weeks of 2 years to the day.
Yeah, but I mean, he also escaped several times. I mean, if I'm not a particularly don't particularly subscribe to a whole lot of the supernatural stuff, but if I lived in a small town with a dude that supposedly could do black magic and he keeps getting out of jail and he would know my name if I testified him, you're sitting there on the stand. He's like, "Hey, Steve, how's your sister?" And you're like, "Oh, hell."
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. I'd be scared to death.
Well, allegedly, the shaman that the federal investigators called in, he called upon even older magic, something they referred to as the old tobacco or the old smoke. Mike, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, they had one of the forbidden magics that they used up there is the Cherokee or the Katua tribe. They used what they would smoke somebody, which means if you got mad at somebody, you could take tobacco to a shaman. He would do a ritual and smoke them, which, you could have, bad things happen to him. But the magic that he was into was he would transform and kill you. Now, investigators, some of the actual investigators didn't even believe that Hart was even there. They don't think he may have done it. One of the main OSBI investigators that actually quit the case, he said, I don't think he was part of this murder. He said he had 5 years to serve. He admitted, to the Tulsa girls you talked about that he raped. He admitted to that. And when they asked him about the little girls, if he raped them, he said no. And if you notice, if you read the report on the little girls, at first they said the little girls were raped. But if you go deeper and you read into that, they weren't raped. They were molested. And it doesn't really fit his MO because everyone he was ever connected to, he raped.
Yeah.
And then you got the boys running around town saying, we did it. And then you got the father saying, my son probably helped kill him. And that's why they killed him. And he said, my son done it. He needs to be accountable too. He said, because these kids were in my front room bragging about it. And he said the sheriff would not listen to me. He went and turned his own son in.
Well, considering the heinousness of the crime, I don't blame him. I mean, who can do that to a child? I mean, to me as a cop, one of the worst things I ever had to deal with was crimes against children. And the people that perpetrated those crimes, child molesters and child abusers, oh man, it was difficult to even treat them as human.
And these kids, And these kids weren't normal kids. They were living in old abandoned cars. They were living in the caves. They were living in the woods. They were a wild bunch of kids. I mean, they weren't your kids. They were, and just, he said they just lived everywhere. They were just wherever they could stay. But tell me if you all think this is strange. This is one of the things that bothered me the most. One of the things. Whenever they asked Carla if she had seen the flashlight that was there at the bag over it that had the fingerprint on it, the bloody fingerprint that was never matched to anyone. She said she never saw the flashlight. This big, large, orange flashlight, right? And you can see it plainly in the evidence picture. This right there by the bodies. But she can describe everything about the backpack, the rope around the necks, the condition they're body in. She remembers everything. And you can see it plainly, this huge flashlight. And she says there wasn't a flashlight there.
How does she miss that?
And she was standing right there. Right. She was right there. And she says it wasn't there. Then all that flashlight shows up with a fingerprint on it that doesn't match. It did not match Leroy Hart. It was not his fingerprint. It didn't match anybody.
There's so many layers about this case that is just so bizarre. But the thing I keep coming back to is, every time, it was even documented, like you were saying, by the federal investigators, that he would disappear and an animal would appear. It sounds to me, it sounds like a case of a skinwalker.
Well, it fits the dark magic.
It certainly fits the dark
People
magic.
even brought up the idea of astral projection. Right. One of the shamans said what he would do was astral project. That was brought up. They said he was able to, his spirit, to leave his body and go into the body of an animal or something like that. And he was able to use that animal as a gateway for him to be able to use that body while he was in a trance that he would do. And he would use the dog or the owl or the cat. And he bragged about it. I mean, he told them, he said, I watched you guys from the air and from the ground. And he told them what they were doing. And he was correct.
Yeah. And it's the supernatural aspect of this case that really, as a cop, freaks me out. I'm not sure how I would have handled a case like this with so many obvious supernatural elements involved. I mean, the federal agents that went on record saying this happened, they were taking their careers in their hand by saying stuff like that. You generally, you start saying you saw a guy turn into a bird and fly away. Next morning, you're getting the random whiz quiz in your mailbox.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say there's a drug test and a long interview that goes along with that statement.
Yeah.
You one of them fancy jackets.
Another thing that happened too.
What's that, Mike?
The sheriff, as soon as the murder happened, he came out and announced that they found the murder and that the murder weapon was an axe. The OSBI immediately held a news conference and they said, we have no idea what the sheriff's talking about because there's been no murder weapon found. So, I mean, even from the beginning, they were not on the same. Well, if you read some of the reports, the one little girl that was found outside of the sleeping bag, she was duct taped to the tree and had a cord around her neck. The other little girl that was in the sleeping bag that was all twisted up was in bad shape. She was, one officer said the way she was twisted up and her head had a lot of damage. Be nice to the family. It was bad. And
like somebody took the sleeping bag and beat her against a tree.
And well, they said that one man said, now, it looked like something had used its hand and had caved her head in.
A hand.
I mean, violent.
Holy moly!
But
That's a
yes, a hand.
that's a
And
lot of force.
that's what he said. And then it goes back, to the pole, to the tent pole. What grabbed that tent pole and snapped it? They said there was no way a man could grab that and break it. No way. But something, because the footprints were on.
When you start dealing with with this end of things, it's one of those things you just there's no way to rationalize. Okay, this is what this is. Because there's no normal explanation. There's no logic that explains how that could happen. As an investigator, you just throw your hands in the air like, I can't explain how this happened. Without sounding crazy. I can't imagine what these poor investigators.
Another thing they didn't release either,
and
you're going to find it.
No, what I was about to say is, let's break up the tinfoil hat for a minute. Let's assume this guy really is some kind of a skinwalker or something, and he shapeshifts into other critters. What would he have shifted into to do that kind of damage?
The Longa Dog Lala, the dog man?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Dog man, It'd
have to be something with a hand, obviously,
and
it'd have to be something tremendously strong.
It's just scary to think about. I'm terrified.
Another thing
books.
that helped. Another thing that helped Leroy Hart get, where he wasn't convicted also is they took semen samples from inside sleeping bags, and they ran DNA on those also, and it came back it was not his. But the state prison said that whenever they had him previously, that he had a vasectomy. The doctor testified and said it was possible for him to have semen having a vasectomy, but was very rare. But the semen did not come back to match Leroy Hart either.
Well, he would have had semen, but he wouldn't have had any cells in it. That would be very distinctive.
Yeah, it'd be easy to spot.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't think there would have been a debate as to who it was then at that point, because
you wouldn't need DNA evidence. Anybody with a microscope, if you take a look at the semen and find there's no swimmers in the pool.
Sal Passos asked us, was DNA available in 1977? Not as we know it. It was more like blood type matching, that kind of thing. DNA really didn't become more of a factor until the mid to late 80s. And even then it was in its infancy. But since they weren't collecting specifically for DNA samples, most of the samples that they did collect were badly degraded by the time they were able to be tested.
You talk about the supernatural aspect of it. Harvey Pratt, the OSBI undercover cop that was involved in it, said that he spoke to Taylor that was holding James Leroy Hart. And James Leroy Hart would taunt him during the night, telling him that he'd turn into an animal and slip between the bars and escape at any time. James Leroy Hart, after he had told the jailer this, and the jailer had told Harvey Pratt, which was undercover at the time for the OSBI, he went and made a report of it. The next night, lo and behold, James Leroy Hart escaped. And the sheriff's department to this day will not release how he escaped the jail that night. They will not release that information. It's been held ever since he's done it. It's been withheld.
The camera quit working.
Well, even if the camera stopped working, how did he get out of a cell, get out of a locked cell? I worked corrections for 10 years. Of course, ours was a more modern facility, and it didn't have cell doors. They had thick glass and steel doors. But even in the old days with those bars, they were close enough together. You couldn't put an adult human skull between that, much less unhinge your joints and stuff like that to shimmy through. And even people that could are good contortionists and could have possibly pulled that off. It takes time. It's not like he just goes whoop, and out the door he goes. It would take him some time to wiggle between the bars, and he would have gotten caught. So
But is that
it sounds like to me they're covering something up.
Is that not information not covered in FOIA?
Only if it's a closed case, and this case is still listed as open. Open cases are not covered under Freedom of Information.
Yeah, this
Damn
is considered
loopholes.
unsolved at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, well, it's solved but opened.
Yeah, that's one of those. They when the most recent
Yeah.
when they did the DNA test, they claimed the case was solved, but they kept the case file open. To me, and the only reason that like in the case of the two people that were killed, badly mauled in Cocke County, Tennessee. That case is still open, even though it's been a couple of years back that those two people were killed. They kept it open because open cases are not subject to Freedom of Information Act.
So they're deliberately keeping the evidence from being able to
Like
be
Miss Hamilton
disclosed.
and the black preacher.
I got you.
Mike, I know this is
the Miss Hamilton case. They just found.
What was that, Mike? I'm sorry, we kind of cut you out there for a second.
It's okay. There's kind of a delay. Miss Hamilton, the teacher that was killed, they found out later that she was consumed alive, left in that ditch of water, and they said it was a black panther was one of the things they had said. But what they didn't say is a lady had called in 3 times to 911 and said there was a black creature walking on 2 legs in the same field that she was found in the ditch. But the 911 operator, when she called in, telling the deputy or the police, whoever she dispatched, she told them it was a misidentification of a panther and telling them what the person was actually calling in. So,
yeah, because you panthers walk around on their hind legs all the time.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah,
well,
common occurrence.
Mike, is it just me, or does it seem like a lot of these unexplained animal attacks are on the rise? I mean, you had the animal killings out in Meeker, Colorado, where like the tongue and certain elements, certain organs were missing, and we're seeing this happen in other places, and they're calling it dog attacks, and in some of the cases, these dog attacks are coming back with like 40 teeth when your average dog has 24.
I think it's interesting how many of these cases are easily discounted as panthers.
The last one I just looked at.
Oh, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just saying, like the case I just read, that there's a little kid in Oklahoma that was bit, and they said it was a dog that had 60 teeth.
How many? I'm sorry, you cut out there for a second.
I think he said 60.
The dog had, 3. I believe the normal amount of teeth the dog has is 42.
That's insane. So right there, they're just admitting it's something that we don't know what it is. It's not something we recognize as a normal animal in the the scientifically identified animals we know of.
Right. Humans have more teeth than a lot of critters out there, and we only have 32, assuming you get to keep your wisdom teeth.
Yeah, I think dogs have it's either 22 or 24, and for them to admit this thing had way more teeth than that and a much wider bite pressure, a much wider bite than most dogs. That's, to me, that's just very telling.
Well, and I was starting to say when I inadvertently spoke over Mike that
I tell you, a case.
We're talking about everything is getting discounted as panthers, black panthers. Okay, black panthers aren't that common in North America.
No, they're not.
You're
Mike,
talking about a melanistic mountain lion.
Yeah. Mike, what were you going to say?
Y'all should take a look at a case. It's James McNeilis out of Oklahoma. That case has probably bothered me than any case that I've actually on, as far as like when I started doing this, the cryptids and stuff. I spoke directly to his father. When the little boy was murdered, I noticed whenever they placed the location that the child was killed, it was GPS coordinates listed by the Oklahoma game wardens, which in Oklahoma they're federal. And a lot of times it's not uncommon for them to use, GPS because they don't deal with, roads and intersections. They deal with territory. And whenever I put it in for the body location, it put the boy's body at a pond in the middle of. Well, they were saying the little boy found in the backyard. So some of the law enforcement first responders had contacted me, and they're telling me they're like, something's up with this story. Something's up with this story. So I did speak to the father, and he told me, he said, my little boy was not in the backyard because he had said he looked for his boy for 15 minutes, couldn't find him, and called 911. I said, it took you 15 minutes, to find your son in your backyard? And he said, no. He said, found at the pond. Now, what people don't know is the little boy, and this is his father, his internal organs were gone. He was decapitated with his head placed underneath his left arm, and his whole throat area was missing, never retrieved. They moved to the backyard. They wouldn't let the first responders enter the backyard until the body, he said, was put back in the backyard. I then talked to him a second time, and he had redacted a lot of what he had said. But here's the weird thing: they were a poor family. You could tell that they were, they struggled, and their home was an older home. After this happened, they blamed it on a family dog that they had found, and it was a small dog at that. And now they're living in a 2-story new house, brand new car, everything. And the neighbors are like, the men in black show up and all this happens. And his dad's like, oh, well, the state took care of the burial for us and everything. And they helped us because they knew we couldn't live here. Don't do that. The police do not buy you a new house because something bad happened at your house.
Somebody was paid to keep their mouth shut.
William wants to know what the bite radius was.
Oh, yeah, they even posted.
What was that? I'm sorry, you cut out.
Oh, they posted on their internet. They're like, we're finally living our dream, and their little boy's dead. And I dug even deeper into it, and come to find out, they're witches. And the day that he was killed was on the exact day of the hunter's moon. It was not at nighttime on the hunter's moon. It was around the exact time of the hunter's moon. And he was dressed in cosplay when the little boy was killed.
Now,
That's bizarre.
By witches, are you talking like Wiccans, or as in like black magic witches?
Black magic.
Okay.
That's bizarre. William Nighthawk wanted to know if anybody knew what the bite radius was. I know it was a very large bite radius, but I don't remember they released the exact dimensions.
They said it looked like a shark.
Like a what?
They compared it to a shark bite.
A shark bite. Well, that's definitely not a dog.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
That's bizarre.
Probably a black panther.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Or a misidentified bear.
Black tiger shark.
Swamp gas.
Swamp gas.
Mike, there's one thing.
And if you notice, all the dogs that are involved in these attacks.
So Steve Patton is giving us some updates on dogs. So apparently, I can't put the comment up. I'm sorry. It says dogs have a total of 42 teeth. So our mysterious biting critter still has too much dentition to be a.
How many was it? 60 teeth? Mike, how many did you say? Was it 60 teeth?
63.
63 teeth? That's an odd number of teeth.
63.
Bizarre.
It's probably missing one. Now I got to go looking.
Yeah, that's freaking weird. Mike, one thing the one of all the like little case files you present in the sighting reports. One of the things I really like about the way you do things, and I'm gonna start trying to do this myself because it was a great idea, and I really like that you did it. Is you documented not only when it happened, but the phase of the moon when it happened.
You know, that's something we've never really hit on either.
Yeah, I have
much.
a theory.
Go ahead, Mike.
I base that off of a personal theory, just from hunting. I've hunted all my life and been in the woods. On a full moon night, a lot of your attacks aren't happening on a full moon. It's on a waning or a waxing, and I think the reason for that is if these creatures are dogmen that have human intelligence. If they have the rods in their eyes that night predators have, then in low light situations, which would be the waning or the waxing, not the full moon, but the waning or the waxing, they would have a huge ability over their prey because not only would they have the sight, the hearing, they would also have the eyesight, the smell. Their eyesight's going to be far better than ours in low light, kind of like you would use, your nighttime goggles or whatever, using the low light. On a full moon night, us humans good outside. You can see in the field pretty good if it's a full moon. But on a waning or a waxing, I believe that's when most of the attacks are happening is because they have the full advantage during that time in a low light time.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that same the difference in rods and cones in the eyes is also what causes tapetum lucidum, or what's known as eye shine.
Yep.
So it's interesting. So I just did a quick search. So the only terrestrial animals that have more than 60 teeth are crocodilians.
William Nighthawk wanted to know, was it a double row of teeth and extremely long canine teeth?
They didn't say. They just said it was like a shark bite.
Oh, okay. One of the most recent attacks, and I can't remember, it might have been in Oklahoma. They said initially they thought that the woman had been stabbed, but it wasn't until they were doing the autopsy they realized it was an animal attack. But they had these deep puncture marks, and the reason why they initially thought it was a stabbing, but then they said it was unknown canine.
Yeah, she was a caregiver. She had arrived at the people's house that she takes care of, and here's the kicker: even though they thought she was stabbed and everything, she also had a huge blunt head immobilized her before she was partially consumed by what they said was pigs. So I guess a pig bashed her head in and then ate her.
Yeah. Yes, pigs walk around with clubs all the time.
Yeah.
Well, you've heard the term pig stick before, so
Yeah.
just didn't know it meant that.
Well, pig sticker they used to call a pig sticker a pocket knife.
Right. I know, but there's obviously another meaning for pig stick now.
So I just had a question for myself in the chat. I think the handle's Lil Patty. So they were asking what the picture was behind me. If you're talking about the one right here, it's a St. Louis Cardinals poster. I am a huge Cardinals fan. If she's talking about something else, I'll be happy to answer whatever it is.
What's the thing that keeps moving behind you, Steve? What's that?
The thing that keeps moving behind me.
It's peeking through the window.
Hey, well, earlier in the chat, I was asked by someone if there was going to be a Kenai sighting because he was quite the celebrity last show.
Mike, do you think that because I know a lot of these are happening in Oklahoma, do you think it's possible that some of these might trace their roots back to this 1977 killing? That it could be something related?
I do. My family, my mom, they all grew up with these cryptid-like creatures. That's how I got involved in it. My mom then grew up in it, and then of course me being at my granny's when I was younger, she would babysit me and my cousins, and then we also grew up in it. And one of the that mom witnessed when she was 13 years old, which probably would have been in the 50s, was she said looked like a werewolf. Uh, I was laying on the bed one night, and they had an old water cooler. You know, they didn't have the air conditioners; we had the old water coolers, and I was laying where my mom usually laid, and you could kind of see out the bottom where the water cooler motor would spin. And I noticed the yard light got blocked out and something had, stood there. And that was the first time I'd ever heard it speak. And it said my mom's name through the water cooler. And it was animalistic how it said it. And then it had also, which I didn't know this had happened, but back even in the 50s, it stood out on the front side of my granny's house and hands, the come here motion, and was saying her name over and over. Called the sheriff's department many times. There's reports, but the sheriff department also done a report in the same county that they shot at that creature up in the barn loft, and the sheriff actually wrote the report and the undersheriff. It's Nowata County is where they done it at.
I know where that's at. It's really compelling to me that not only are we seeing an increase in those types of attacks in Oklahoma, but they seem to be popping up all across the board. We're getting animal attacks in Tennessee. We're getting animal attacks up in Maine, and they're calling them animal attacks, like in Meeker, Colorado. Some of the animals were just dead. They had no mark on them whatsoever, but others had certain organs missing, and they said that it had signs of canine predation. They thought it might have possibly been wolves, but there were no tracks on the ground. It is so bizarre to me that these kind of attacks seem to be on the rise.
I got a threatening phone call after I'd done a video. We have a kind of a formula that we would use to in like the zoo or something you can use to predict the size of an animal. And I was comparing what I thought could possibly be, the Nephilim blood passed down from to the flood of Noah and Noah's son's wife maybe possibly carrying over, the unclean blood, because they said Noah's blood was clean. And after I had looked into all that, and I put in the normal person, it would come back, but it wasn't large enough to be what people were seeing. It was, human size. It was our size because it was human calculation. But if you put the animal side, the animal side, and you use the calculation that they use for animals, and you use, the Nephilim size, and you compare it to, a lot of that, you can get really close to what people are seeing. And I done a video on it, and I received a stupid phone call from this guy, and he's like, I think you stick with your Gigantopithecus story. And I was like, I don't think it goes that way. And he's like, well, I think it probably should. And I said, no, I don't agree. I think there's other evidence to show that possibly Nephilim, because people, and I was talking about this too, people talk about Bigfoot, is able to make these sounds that are higher than we can hear, lower than we can hear. Some people get nauseous, some people, just different effects. And what I was wondering is I compared to the Bible, and they talked about Satan having instruments in him, and he was able to make these noises. What if part of that was passed down in the vocal cords, and they're able to go higher and lower, if that's a trait? And lo and behold, I get a phone call.
Did he identify himself as somebody, from an agency or anything like that?
No.
Wendy Guizdala had a good question. She said, do you think the reason these attacks are increasing is the internet and these types of shows? In the past, it would usually just be local news.
I think so, because a lot of people are trained to believe what law enforcement tell them or people of authority tell them. I think a majority of the people, that they hear somebody say, well, it was a dog, it was a dog.
Yeah.
This goes to what me and you were talking about, DA, expectancy theory.
Mm-hmm. You want to explain that, Robbie?
Yep. I can't remember what the guy's name was, but he was about 1963-ish. He did a study, and basically it's based on the Pygmalion theory. Pygmalion was the one that sculpted the statue, and he fell in love with it, and he loved it so much that the statue came to life.
Mm-hmm.
The expectancy theory states, and I'll just use, I know all four of us will understand this. Say you come in to search a room, and you got somebody that's got a perimeter set up, and they said he went in there, and you got two options basically. You think, well, he's not in there. He's halfway to Oklahoma by now, and you go in there, and you're searching the room, and you see a pile of laundry, and you see a foot sticking out from the pile of laundry. But if you go in there expecting that he's not in there, your brain basically paid no attention to that man behind the curtain type situations. Your brain tells your eyes you didn't see what you just saw. And therefore you will just skim over that and not pay any attention. But if you go in with the attitude of, okay, he's in there and I'm going to find him, and you slow yourself down, and then you see that and you start seeing more and more and more of it. I think that's got a lot of the reason that, some of these people, like DA, you've said it, I don't know how many times I've heard you say it, that some of these people, even if you bring a body to them, they're going to be like, nah, that's fake.
Yeah.
Because they've been conditioned, like you just said, Mike, they've been conditioned to believe one thing and one thing only, and their minds are so closed and so hyper focused on the fact that these things don't exist, and there's nothing you can do to convince me that they're not. It's not going to matter what you show them or what they see. It's just the way it is. And I think that DA and I talked about that the other day. I learned that in a class I went into this week. People are just so closed-minded and so conditioned to believe one way that they're not going to see any of these things no matter what you show them.
Kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, huh?
Yeah.
Well, and the other side of that
Just like
coin is
whenever I was
true
in
too,
school.
Robbie. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, like whenever I was in school, I done the special operations and tactics. I worked with them. And the first thing they tell you is you take somebody to the ground in the public, they're resisting or not, you yell, stop resisting. You go to court, 9 times out of 10, every citizen around you is going to say he was resisting. It's the authority figure. They are trained to believe what you say is what's happening.
Yeah. Robbie, what I was going to say was the opposite side of that coin of what you were saying. People not expecting to see something, and it not therefore they ignore it, or oh, it had to have been a bear or that kind of thing. They don't believe it's there. The other side of that coin is we've got a lot of people that expect to see something, and that's where we get a lot of this red circle photography, where they find some pattern in the leaves and fixate on that and say, this is a dogman, this is a Bigfoot, when in reality, it's just a bush. Unfortunately, we have a lot of that going around where people are seeing Bigfoot and dogmen where there's really nothing there.
And the red circle crowd.
The red circle crowd. And while I do believe some people have captured legitimate photos, I'd say there's just as many, if not more, that are just circles of bushes. And our brains are wired to look for patterns. It's called pareidolia. And there's a reason they have a word for it, because we're hardwired to look for patterns. And so sometimes I think the other side of the coin of that theory is that some people are seeing things because they expect it to be there when it's not really there.
Yeah, because it's going to work in the reverse. If you tell yourself you're going to see Bigfoot or a dogman or whatever in every picture, then your mind's going to see that in every picture. So, it's a fine line that you got to walk between those two extremes.
And then you get people that, that's not used to being in the woods and hunting in the woods and spending a lot of time in the woods, that decide they're going to go hunt Bigfoot, and they go to, they're not familiar with the noises, or, how things can, the leaves blow or how they move. And whenever you're down there all the time, what those noises are, the shadows that are common, the shadows that aren't common.
That's why I tell people one of the first things that I do when going, especially into a new area, a place I haven't investigated before, or even if you're just going out to a known area, one of the best things you can do is just sit down and be absolutely quiet for the first 45 minutes or an hour. Just listen, get acclimated to the sounds around you, because once the woods become used to your presence, you're going to hear things that you wouldn't hear just walking through.
If it's there, it knows you're there before you know it's there.
Right. And, much like any other animal, I mean, dogs are very good at reading people. Dogs can read intent. If somebody comes to your door and they've got bad intent, your dog's going to know it. I always trust my dog when he doesn't like somebody. And there's a reason they don't like them. I think that any animal, whether it be Bigfoot, dogman, bear, bobcat, mountain lion, coyote, it senses intent. It knows your intent. Maybe it's something about body language. Maybe it's something even about the pheromones your body puts off when you have a particular mission in mind. I don't know. I'm not a medical guy. I'm not a medical expert, but there is something about our intent that animals pick up on. And I think if you go in the woods with the intent that you're going to try to do one of these things harm, you're never going to see one.
I would say they're probably both coming into play there, DA. The pheromones definitely. If you think about a dog's sense of smell being 100,000 times more powerful than ours, and then the body language. I mean, there are dog trainers who can train dogs to react to a couple flicks of your fingers.
Yeah.
Minor movements.
Blue Crossroads says it's kinesics. Yeah, your body language. You can learn to read body language. You can tell a lot about people. That's one of the things when I was a rookie CO, that one of the veteran officers that kind of took me under their wing when I first started. Andy Hammer, who's now passed away, a good friend of mine, he taught me watch the eyes, watch the hands, and check the waistline. And if there's anything odd at the ankles, try and catch that too. But always keep your head on a swivel. And that's something I applied as a CO. It's something I applied as a cop. It's something I apply when I go out in the woods, looking for evidence. Keep your head on a swivel. Look up. Look left and right. Look behind you. You never know where something like that's going to pop up. You can't just focus on one thing, because when you do that, you tend to tunnel vision, and things around you that might be very dangerous to you could go unnoticed.
Well, as an RN, we get in situations sometimes where we have a patient who's in some way compromised, and they'll end up getting violent. And in our evasion courses they teach us, they always tell us to watch the patient's feet. They start shifting to the balls of their feet. Be concerned, because they're getting ready to do something to you. And, I guess it probably applies to law enforcement too. Although my time in law enforcement was very, very limited.
Well, 90% of the time, 99% of the time in my career, I was fortunate enough where I would be able to read the body language and the actions of a person before they reacted, before they moved. And I've come through a lot of tough scrapes because of that. But there was one case that happened back, I believe it was in 2012, where I completely misread this guy, and it almost cost me dearly. I got my head almost stomped in. I was in a neck brace for 3 months. I was in 3 months. Spent the first month of that not being able to remember my kids' names. I had a severe concussion. If it hadn't been for another officer that happened to be there, guy probably would have killed me.
Yeah, some real winners.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. My old lieutenant. I know he's listening tonight, but he said he's maybe too busy to comment. His name's James Jenkins. He was still new in his career. He's retired now, but he was still new in his career when they had Jimmy Don Bunch, who had testified against Hart. And I guess that guy was nine kinds of crazy, and constantly attacked staff, and unprovoked would just start swinging. Those are the worst kind of
You
inmates to
know,
house.
when Hart was in prison, the inmates were terrified of him. Whenever he was in prison, they had to remove him because they said on a full moon night he would make noises and hang from the bars, and they said the noises he made were just so unhuman that the inmates were terrified, and he would start like masturbating and everything, and he would just totally flip out. I mean,
Wow.
he had some problems. Maybe even possession.
Well, he was certainly a dark enough of a personality and entity that I wouldn't rule that out. I mean, in order to even become a skinwalker type creature, you've got to do something so heinous that it basically tarnishes your soul. I mean, if he was a skinwalker, like the federal investigators seem to hint at, if he truly was a skinwalker, then he was pure evil.
Well, I think this definitely qualifies as tainting his soul.
Oh yeah, there's no way you walk away from that after perpetrating that kind of crime. There's no way you walk away from that clean.
No.
No. Well, whether he did this to, finish this ritual off, or whether he was already well established and was just doing this as a matter of course, it's still some dark stuff.
Growing old with purposes. Hart died from a heart attack in prison. Yeah, like almost 2 years exactly from the time of the little when the little girls were killed. But the shaman that the federal prosecutors used called upon the old magic to bring him in, and he was firmly convinced that it was the old magic that got him.
Hart's brother also died of a heart attack at around the same age Hart did.
Really? Do you think his brother was involved?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I think
So
maybe
there might have been quite a few people involved in this.
His brother. I said my opinion in one of the videos was this. I mean, it's sad to say it, but I guess my theory would be that those 3 little girls, since they found that note before they ever came, were on a mission to kill 3. They're put in a tent that's blocked the showers. It's a rainy night. They see the lights. The woman shines a light on them. It turns the light out. They watch the light go to their tent. They hear kids scream for their mom. People at the Kiowa unit, also the staff, hear it. Nobody goes and looks. They go to sleep. They let it happen. I believe those 3 little girls, before they ever got there, were never going to leave that campground. I believe they were a sacrifice.
They were chosen for that ritual.
I believe it was a setup deal. That's my belief, yes.
And because of the 4 fires in the cave, I think they were just the completion of that ritual.
Yeah, because they said that, there was no reason there wasn't 4 people in their tent. It was just a mistake.
Right.
One tent that night had 5 girls in it. Too many things were
so
off.
that wasn't a mistake.
Yeah, 3 and the 3 youngest girls too.
Right.
And if you read their rituals, as far as a shapeshifter, they believe the younger the victim, and even the closer, that they're related to you, the stronger the shapeshifter you are when you kill them.
Yeah. And, the thing is folks, even if you don't believe in this sort of thing, if you don't believe in skinwalkers, if you don't believe in dark magic, if you don't believe in the power of Native American ritual and magic, if you put that all aside, even if that's taken off the table, the people that did this believed in it, and that's what did it. Whether or not you believe the magic portions were real, whether you believe he actually changed into animals, all of that's irrelevant because they believed it, and that's why this happened. And it is a horrendous, just gut-wrenching that it even happened in the first place.
Yeah, because it really doesn't matter what we believe.
I do believe in the power of Native American magic. I do believe there's power there. William Nighthawk, who's in the chat tonight, he's a Lakota shaman. I do believe in Native American mysticism, Native American magic. Hell, right here, I'm gonna tell you kind of living proof. Right here's my spirit bag. William made this for me, and I'm very proud of this. So yes, I do put a lot of stock in Native American lore, Native American magic. But even if you don't put any stock in that, the people that believe in the dark magic truly do. So whether it works or not, they believe it's going to, and they're going to keep doing these kind of rituals.
I believe if he shape shifted, it didn't shape shift or whatever he done, I think that it all comes down to it was for sure a murder that done this. I mean, it was a monster in any form that could do that to those little girls. What was done.
Well, you and DA made a very good point. Let's take the completely agnostic point of view of this whole thing. If you do or don't believe in this, whatever, the fact that the perpetrator of this had that belief, it made them capable of doing some horrible, horrible things. And these 3 little girls died because of it, whether it's a legit skinwalker or it's just some nut job who believes in a skinwalker.
Yeah, and if the magic's real, it's terrifying. Even if the magic's not, it's still terrifying because there's still people that are perpetrating these kind of crimes, expecting the results. It's not going to dissuade them. It's not going to stop this from happening. And if it wasn't working, why would people keep doing it? Let's see.
I think that evil spirits do things the same as good spirits. Angels and demons. I mean, it depends on which dog you feed the most.
Yeah.
The 2 wolves.
I totally agree. The 2 wolves, yeah. There's something else I was going to ask about that completely slipped my mind. Have you've actually been down there to the camp, correct? Or at least down close to it?
Yeah, I'm not so far from it at all.
Have you talked to anybody that has seen that black dog in the area?
The people up in that community. If I'm Cherokee, but I'm not enough Cherokee that they'll talk to me. It's a very close knit community. They do not like people poking around. I've even been told by some of the people I talk to, don't go up there by yourself. You're not enough Indian. I mean, it's even the law enforcement up there are very close with the practices of the Cherokee and the Katua up there and all those. So it's not a real safe place to go poking around if you ain't got friends.
I know exactly what you're talking about. When I was younger, some buddies of mine made a wrong turn and wound up on an Apache reservation and were told in no uncertain terms that we needed to turn around and leave.
Right.
Tamara 0142 says, what town was it in? I live in southern Oklahoma.
It's in Cherokee County.
Cherokee County? That's near Tulsa, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And no, it'd be over kind of in the Pryor area, over in that area.
I just drove through
northeast.
Pryor the other day. I wasn't far from there.
You think you didn't make that wrong turn the other day?
My wife and I went down to Durant, Oklahoma just the other day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would love to go up there and go onto the property. And a lot of people trespassed and went onto the property, but I'm not going to go unless I get permission from the owner. I tell everybody don't past. But
Yeah.
I would be
I wouldn't
interested
go
just
without
to
permission.
go and kind of, I would just
The,
like to go the area, and then you get, just
the
I
camp was
think the
in Mays
sadness,
County, There
there
Oklahoma.
was
Locust
what
Grove,
40.
Oklahoma is the closest point.
What was that, Steve?
Oh, the camp was in Mays
Yes.
County, Oklahoma. Locust Grove was the nearest town.
Did you know there was a ranger at the camp, the little kill too?
There was what? I didn't catch that, Mike. There was what?
There was a ranger. A ranger was stationed at Camp Scott the night the girls were murdered. They didn't want to release that either, but they never notified the ranger of none of the lights in the field, none of the noises or anything. He said he never notified of anything out of the ordinary that night.
And you said the ranger was killed?
You had what 40? No, he was not notified of anything
Oh, not
going on that
notified.
night out of
Okay.
the out of the norm. Right. And my question was, you got 40 some staff members. Why was they all staying in a tent and not having an adult in each tent with the children? Sounds to me like it was more of a party for the adults than the kids.
I agree.
Well, one of the members of the chat made a comment very early on. I apologize, I forgot who it was. They were talking about how when they were, the fact there were no adults just up and roaming during this was so bizarre because they did that when they were in scouts, and I remember that as well. I'm an Eagle Scout. I did a lot of camping. There was always an adult leader that was up. And when I became an adult leader, we would take 2 to 4 hour shifts, walking around, staying awake, just in case it was mostly make sure the boys didn't get into mischief, but it's also to protect them. Why were there no adults just roaming around while this was going on? 40 staff members. What the hell?
When I was in Cub Scouts, whenever we went out, there was always an adult up and around. You'd get up, go to the bathroom, and you'd immediately get lit up with a flashlight. Hey, just going to the bathroom.
Yep. We usually had 2 of them at a time. But yeah.
Cameron 0142 says that's your job to watch the kids. Exactly. Go ahead, Mike.
Even Miss Farmer, whenever she went to the location that her daughter was killed, she made the comment that something was off with the tents, that the one that her daughter was in was moved from how the others were. And when she made that comment, they told her, well, no, that's just how we had to do it because we knew the rain was coming in or whatever. But she said, I would not have stayed in that tent. She said, I would have been afraid to stay in that tent my daughter was in. It was so far away, so secluded, blocked by the showers. I mean, they couldn't even see the little girls over there, 3 of the youngest girls there. And then you got all these adults are hearing a kid yell for help, yell for their mom. They're hearing noises. They don't even know what it is. And they're so afraid that they won't even go out and look. They're seeing flashlights and, well, I'm going to lay down, go to sleep, see what I see in the morning.
Yeah, that is bizarre to me too. How that nobody reacted to that. That's negligence
That's a
at the very
failure.
least. That's negligence at the very least, and they did get sued over that.
Yes, it was dropped.
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, I will be right back. Robbie, Steve, can you guys hold on for me for a minute? I will be right back.
We got you. So, I guess one of the things to me, Mike, that really stands out that I mentioned earlier is the fact that it seemed to me like the sheriff, he had this guy in mind from the start of the investigation. So what the sheriff presents this case, and then he immediately is found not guilty by a jury of his peers, right? Pretty
Yes.
much. So, but the case is still held open. Why is the case still open if he went through trial and was found not guilty? Is there still people holding out that there maybe that there's somebody else that was involved that wasn't named? Or
From what I understand is, he had been on the run for 2 years and had escaped the sheriff multiple times, making him look bad. And then, of course, the alleged, his wife with him and all that. And they had this huge murder that happened. It was nationwide. So he sees the opportunity to use these federal agencies and all these sources that's coming in to get this man that he wants, and which he probably was involved, but he focused everything on him and neglected evidence, and he didn't get I would say it's almost like a cult killing. He didn't get the whole group. But then also, they spoke to the family and they left it up to the family. They asked them, they said, do you want to close the case, or do you feel like, there's parts of this case that could still come up? And the family did ask that the case be left open. So they left the case open.
okay, I must have missed that part about the family keeping it open then.
Well, I could think of 3 reasons why, even if the family wasn't involved, why the local sheriff would want to keep it open. First of all, the prime suspect got acquitted. So now you don't have a prime suspect anymore. Second of all, if you keep it open, they can't file a Freedom of Information Act to get of the details that you don't want released to the public. And then third, it draws attention, and it draws funding, and it draws notoriety. This sheriff is now, is somewhat of a celebrity because they've got this grisly unsolved case in his jurisdiction.
But that sheriff's probably long since retired and probably even passed, because that he'd have been the sheriff in 1977.
Well, that's true. I mean, I was born in 76 and I'm pushing 50. So,
well, if he was a sheriff in 77, I'm assuming that wasn't his first term.
Right.
He was probably in 30s or 40s, if he was old enough to become sheriff. Because you don't just, get your commission as a deputy and go, you know what? I'm ready for sheriff.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, he would have had to be 25, 30 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That would put him, 75?
Yeah, I'm sure he's probably no longer with us.
Yeah.
But
Or at the very least retired.
I find it, just odd that he just immediately went after him and just the hell with that, anything else. And that's a good point you make, Mike. That this guy had embarrassed him several times before, so he had a bone to pick with him, obviously, and he was implicated in some other things. But I guess there's no way, any way you slice it, they fumbled the entire investigation, because whoever else was involved with this pretty much got away with it scot-free, at least up until now. So
I think Hart was definitely involved. I 100% say Hart was involved. I mean, when he was brought out of the cave, he was wearing the glasses of one of the victims. I mean, he was involved. But there's more. I think there was way more than just him.
Well, like
I
said
think he
earlier,
probably had those kids helping.
At the very least.
I mean, you've got 3 grade school children fighting for their lives. Like you were saying earlier, DA, your 3 sons, when they were that age, were kicking your butt, and you weren't trying to kill them.
No.
I'm sorry. The
one person could not have kept them quiet.
No, there's no way. No way at all.
The OSBI agent, when they asked him how he thought that it may have happened, he said that what he believes happened is whoever entered that night found little girls asleep and bashed one of the girls' head in, and then killed the other girl, the cord around the other girl's throat, and led her out alive. He said the amount of blood that was found in the tent, he believed that 2 of the victims were killed inside of the tent, and which is why they thought that the sheriff came out so fast and said they found a murder weapon, the axe, that the OSBI said there was never an axe found. But 2 of the girls were killed by blunt force trauma, and they believe the other one was took out alive with the cord around her neck, tied to the tree, duct taped to the tree, and then sexually assaulted until she was later dead.
Well, it seems to me it would make the most sense to take out the biggest threat first. You know, take out the 10-year-old. Somehow find a way to contain the next oldest, and then you can have your way with whichever one you're going to use for your ritual or whatever the hell you're doing. It's terrifying to think about.
Growing old with purposes, do you think Hart was chosen to be a scapegoat, maybe and left his DNA on purpose? Now, I truly think he was involved. I think he was instrumental in this, and I think he was likely the mastermind behind it. But I'm not convinced that he was alone.
I mean, even if those kids would have helped him, those young kids, him just being an adult and being a hero in the community, that would have been enough to make those kids want to follow him and to be like him. I mean, he could have told those kids that was in, Jimmy's that night, the young man that was killed, to keep quiet. I mean, he could have had those kids do anything. I mean, if he was held as a hero in his community, the kids would look up to him. I mean, he would be a big impression on them. I mean,
well, those kind of folks tend to be rather charismatic, and they tend to kind of foster disciples.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at like the Manson women. They did some horrifically horrible things just out of hero worship for that crazy SOB.
Well, in this, and again with this case, what was I? I was completely lost my train of thought. I was going to say something. What was that I was going to say? I'm sorry, guys. Yeah. Oh, that's what I was going to say. He was, unanimously found not guilty by the jury, but they never focused on any other suspect.
Yeah,
they even brought some suspects in. It had blood. Their shoes were soaked in blood, and they were released.
Wow, that I didn't know.
And
that is insane.
Oh yeah, the boys. Yeah, the boys that were in. I got it here. The boys that were in Travis's house, his father that said they done it, one of them into the court as a suspect. His shoe still had the blood in it, and they released him, and there was no follow-up on him at all. Wow. It was all heart or nothing.
Put all his eggs in one basket and refused to even look at anything else. That is just terrible police work.
But see, the thing with that,
he made it personal.
He could have had his vendetta against Hart, but that would have not changed had he focused on other suspects too.
Well, even if the rumor came out that his wife had an affair with Hart, that alone should have recused him from the case.
But what I'm saying, even I don't get why he just went after him, because if he wraps 5 or 6 other people up in it, as long as he gets Hart, that should have been all that mattered to him in the vendetta part of it. Why did he just so adamantly just want to go after this one person? I mean, I get that he had a vendetta against him, but getting everybody else involved would not stop that vendetta from happening as long as he's got Hart involved in it. That's what was so crazy to me, is why he ignored all this other evidence. He had evidence connecting Hart to the case. He's got his golden goose right there. That's what he wanted. Why overlook all the other stuff that was implicating all these other people?
That to me just is mystifying.
Yeah, that's what blows my mind from the law enforcement side of it.
And then you got your own deputy that's standing there in the room that goes to testify, and he says, Oh, I saw that picture in your desk 2 years ago. You planted that. Like,
Yeah, that whole department should have been recused. They should have let the state police
sounds-
handle that investigation. That entire department should have been recused from that case. William Nighthawk asked, did they describe any lacerations on any of
sounds
the
like
victims, maybe on the backs or shoulders, or flesh torn? There's a difference between a cats and dogs cut, bears and raptors and gugway tear flesh.
no. It was blunt force trauma, and the way the little girl, the way they talked about how her body was twisted up, it was that one guy said he
Like,
don't even know how a human could twist another human up the way she was.
like bones
I
twisted
mean,
and
she
broken or
they
crushed?
they they used the word pretzel,
Oh,
twisted
It's
and
like,
broken. They said she was like a pretzel. She was twisted up.
it's like your definition of jujitsu there, DA. You know, the
yeah,
art of folding clothes with the suspect wearing them.
yeah. Wow. I'm just still I'm completely astounded by this case. It
Well, can I put the tinfoil hat on again for a minute? Is it possible that maybe I don't want to say that Hart was a scapegoat because I'm obviously he's guilty as hell. But is it possible that there was a darker something going on, something more supernatural, and they just put the focus on him just to take it away from the smoke and mirrors that was the rest of the stuff?
Mike, what do you think? You know more about this case than I do.
I think it's good. I think it's a good possibility because Hart was open with what he was able to do, and maybe he was putting things out there that the rest of the cult didn't want out there. And when people talk too much, then you silence them. And
Well,
yeah, I
I
think
mean,
that
you know, my thought on the whole thing is okay. Let's again, like I said, put the tinfoil hat on. You know, if nothing else, that's what we do on the show. But okay, you've got this really dark stuff going on, and you've got this very charismatic, you know, nutty as hell guy with a long criminal history, and this horrendous crime happens. If I was a county sheriff or I was the whatever the local constables were in this area, I would wanted to get the attention away from me, and I particularly wouldn't want to have all this, quite frankly, black magic shit going on, and the notoriety that would go along with that. I mean, it's bad for tourism. It's bad for everything. You know, pin it on this charismatic jerk.
That does make a certain amount of sense that they would want to pin this stuff on him. But at the same time, I truly believe he was involved. Maybe he was trying to teach what he was able to do to those younger kids. Maybe the ritual was about making them like him. We can't say what the ritual itself was for, especially if he was able to do this kind of stuff to escape jail before these murders even happened. So maybe it was about indoctrinating somebody else, helping somebody else become one of these skinwalker type creatures. Maybe that's what it was about in the first place. But I still think he was the instrument by which this all happened. Even if there were other people involved, if it hadn't have been for him, it wouldn't have happened.
I'm with you, D. I agree completely. I think he was 100% involved, and
absolutely.
probably the hatchet man if nothing else. Um, who is it? I can't pull it up. Penny Van had asked, how much strength would it take for a human to do these things? A human couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You're talking like chimpanzee strength at minimal. Humans cannot fold another human up. Andre the Giant couldn't pull it off. It is absolutely ridiculous stuff.
Robert D says, was there other strange things happening in that area afterwards for years? The black dog has supposedly been seen in that area, and that's just it's the whole area is it's private property and the camp closed. But since I don't live in the area, I can't speak for strange happenings. But to me, it just seems like an area they want forgotten almost. Mike?
Oh yeah, you can actually Google the black dog. There's a photograph of the black dog. You can Google it. But yeah, that area is known for Bigfoot activity and stuff like that. It's there's a lot of Native Americans up there that still practice their beliefs, and they the skinwalker, the shapeshifter, the skilly, all that's believed there. So it's in history.
Werewolf 5674 had a question, and Mike, you can answer this one too. You worked in law enforcement, where he says, if someone is acquitted, can you still continue an investigation? Not against that person for that crime. If they're acquitted, you can't get them on double jeopardy. However, if new evidence comes to light that links him to a different aspect of the crime, that can be investigated. But he couldn't be investigated for the ones he was acquitted for.
Right. And you can still pursue other suspects.
Right, and definitely you should. They should have been pursuing other suspects, especially since some of these people had bloody shoes and they just dismissed it. To me, this entire thing, this is either the worst case of incompetency I've ever seen in investigating a triple homicide, or it was deliberate. I had a super sticker from Miss Lenita. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
And whenever
Thanks, Anita.
and when a father turns his own son in and says, "I recognized his friend's shoe print inside the cave because I've never seen a shoe like that. I knew it was him." And the sheriff goes, "Oh no, it wasn't them." And then the guy's son gets killed because he went and talked. Well, no, it wasn't them.
No,
Yeah, that's why I keep going back to that, because there's just he could, and I know somebody made in the comments that maybe that it was to keep the investigation from broadening, but stuff like that's going to come up anyway. So why not go for the evidence that's there? I mean, you go where the evidence takes you. I mean, that's my DA's philosophy and all the stuff that we do in the cryptid world. So if you've got evidence that's linking suspect A, B, and C, why are you not going to charge suspect B and C just like you do with suspect A? I mean, that's just like saying, okay, we got this guy right here. I don't care that this evidence, we got this guy. He was involved in it, so we're just going to charge him with everything. That's not how it works. Because stuff like that he might not have wanted to come out. There's a chance for it to come out in trial anyway, even if because this guy is the one who supposedly had the affair with his wife. Mm-hmm. That could come out in court. The defense attorney is going to know all that stuff and bring all that stuff up especially if it recuses the sheriff from the investigation. I mean,
follow the evidence.
That's not going to stop that investigation from broadening.
Well, and I was thinking, follow the evidence, screw the agenda, and let's say this guy was messing around with the sheriff's wife. Okay, so we recuse the sheriff. That doesn't give this suspect carte blanche to do horrible things just because he happens to be boinking the sheriff's wife. That doesn't give him diplomatic immunity, if you will.
No, exactly.
Stop, not charging the other one. That's not going to stop the investigation from, especially with it staying open this long. I mean, the investigation is going to broaden as the investigation comes up. I mean, there's something else that stopped him from going after the others involved and just focusing on this guy. That's
Even the federal investigators didn't go after the others.
Yeah.
And another weird thing too, I've wondered, is whenever they caught him, all this time that Mr. Leroy Hart was on the run, he was with this shaman that taught him the black magic, living with him in his cabin out in the woods. And they never arrested him for aiding or anything, never even questioned him as to what was he doing during this time, where was he at. That shaman was kept anonymous. They wouldn't even. And then they go find this other shaman because they say the only way you're going to find Gene Hart is to use magic against magic. And then he does this spell and he goes and finds him. I mean, he takes him right to him. So, I mean.
So what was I going to say? I'm sorry. My train of thought derailed. With the you said how many of the federal investigators retired after this case?
There was, I got it wrote down here. I believe it was 24, I believe is what it was. 22 of them.
So 22 investigators hung it up after this case. And wasn't there a couple of them passed away mysteriously?
22 seasoned, yes, 22 seasoned officers retired immediately following the case, and some of them died of just multiple illnesses, accidents. So,
Wow.
I'll be the first to say that this was a heinous thing, and it probably you made a huge psychological mark of the people involved. But 24 people, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Something is going on here. There's more to this story than just simple. They couldn't chase the demons away after working this case.
Yeah, this is far more than we will ever know.
Yeah.
But for 24 officers to hang it up after this one case, that's horrifying. What happened in this case that broke those officers? I mean, I've known officers that have retired and stepped down and went on another line of work after a critical incident. Had a good friend was involved in a shooting where he had to shoot somebody, and he was never the same after that. He lasted about 6 months. He was cleared of any wrongdoing in the shooting. It was a good shoot, but he was just not the same. He was a great cop up until the shooting, but his heart was no longer in it. It freaked him out, and he went on to another career. And I'm not saying anything bad about him because of it. I'd hope I would. Well, fortunately, in my law enforcement career, I was never in a situation where I had to use lethal force. I came very damn close a few times, but I never had to actually pull the trigger on somebody. So I can't say with 100% certainty how I would have reacted had I been in his place. But I'm just saying what my point is. A lot of officers deal with these critical incidents, but for 24 on the same case, that case had to have been horrifying.
Yeah, I don't.
that, and I don't know if it was, and then the weird thing is Carla, the one I said would have been a suspect to me, she is 18 years old. She goes down, sees the bodies, everything, and I believe she went on to pursue a job in law enforcement. So
Yeah, I just can't. I can't see 24 people stepping down strictly on the basis of what they saw here. Not that you can compare apples and oranges, but I mean, think about frontline healthcare workers with the aforementioned 21st century plague we're dealing with here. You don't have a 90% exodus of all healthcare workers because of that stuff, and those folks lost some shit. There's more to this story. This stuff's making my head itch. There's something.
I think
it's not adding up.
That some of these officers were given the option of retire or get fired, because I think they were shut up. I think something happened in this case that was so bad they didn't want anybody talking about it, and these officers were given the option of retire and keep your benefits, or we're going to fire you and discredit you. To me, that makes more sense. That they were told to step down and walk away and keep their mouths shut.
I think you nailed it, DA. Yeah, I don't even need my tinfoil hat for that.
Aussie Sue says, "Is there anything why the parents have given up on the case?" I don't know. I know the parents sued the scout camp, and that was later dropped. But I don't know why the parents would stop pursuing it. If it had been one of my boys, I'd be rattling somebody's cage every day, wanting to find out, hey, what are you doing to further this investigation?
right, yeah, the parents, they I seen an interview where they spoke to the parents, and the parents said that they knew that Jean Leroy Hart was part of it, but they still believed that there were more involved. But because the handling of the DNA and every evidence, that there was no way that they will ever be able to prove it. Now, there's been too many people handled it, the way it was stored, the way it was collected. They even had some of the investigators walk through the crime scene and did track the blood across the floor of the tent and outside. I mean, it was FUBAR.
Do Do you think that might have been a deliberate mishandling of the evidence?
Yeah, I don't believe they ever wanted to find everybody, because why would you be hiding footprints? Why did the sheriff come out and say there was an axe? OSBI says there was no axe. Gene Leroy Hart gone for 2 years. The sheriff couldn't find him on his own. I mean, did he want to find him? 2 years, if he's living in the same county, you're going to find him.
Yeah, the
Talk,
county's
even if
not
it's friends,
massive.
people talk.
Right.
Oh, as small as this community was, my goodness.
Right. And I think
I mean, I live in a
I
town
think
of
there's a huge buddy
160,000
system
people,
up there.
and I can't go to Walmart without running into somebody I know. There is no way in hell this guy just vanished like a fart in the wind into a town of that size. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is, those 3 little girls paid for it.
Yeah. Silver Foxtrot says, I've heard something about adrenochrome. They scare the person or something before they get their blood or something. I've read about that too. Some predators, ambush predators, like to scare their prey before they take them down, because you get that adrenochrome into the bloodstream, and it changes the flavor of the meat. There was something I read. Certain hunters prefer to wound an animal before they kill it, so that adrenaline gets in. They like the flavor of the infused meat. I don't know if I know the difference, or if I would notice the difference. I'm not much of that much of a gourmand when it comes to like deer meat. Whether or not you scared it or not, I prefer to put one down quickly so I don't have to track it.
I was about to say, I don't know, my fat ass wants to chase it.
Yeah, I'm too old to chase it over hills and valleys anymore.
Yeah, it is interesting.
One person made the comment, if he was a shapeshifter, and he turned into that owl and just fly out of prison.
That very well could be. I mean, if he really did have that kind of power, then there's no jail's going to hold him.
I know my impression is that this guy was scary dark.
Christy, as far as I know, nothing.
Unless
was done
the other shaman that found him.
Mm-hmm. If any of them still live in that area, do you think they would talk to us if we found them?
I think you'd be very lucky to get anybody to talk to you the way they are. You try. I mean, I've tried. I've reached out up there. I can't get anybody. That's why I was laughing about one of the guys told me. He said, if he was a shapeshifter, why didn't he just fly out of the prison yard when he was out there, just turn into an owl and fly away? And another guy said, well, didn't you read the story? The other shaman that caught him tapped him on the bottom of the foot and said he took his magic. He didn't have it no more.
Well, they use magic to catch him.
DA, this is only about 4 hours from us. If we can get permission and you decide to go down there, I would be more than happy to volunteer the cryptid intercept vehicle to go down there, because I want to get more information about this.
Yeah, I would like to come down there. Mike, if you could put me in contact or reach out for us to see if we can get permission to go on there, on that land through the old camp, I would very much like to drive down there and come look around. Like I said, it's only just a few hours.
I'll see what I can find.
That would be fantastic.
Okay,
I'd love for you to come with us.
I'll see who I can find.
Well, as you well know, DA, my weekends are open. Give me a call. You got yourself a wingman.
Absolutely.
Clear out, Steve. I'll be in.
Hell yeah.
We need some backup anyway, Robbie.
No kidding.
If you look,
we'll take them to the train station.
If you look online, you can Google it where some kids of trespass went on there, and they've gave some pretty good footage of the area. It's pretty eerie. It's pretty creepy. Not just because, you can see where the kids were at and the swimming pools, and it's all still there. There's a bicycle laying inside of the swimming pool. It's real.
it's only
Yeah, I
200
definitely
miles
want to go
from
down
us.
there.
So, it's doable. Scary as hell, but it's doable.
Might see that black dog.
To me, it'd be worth the drive down there if I caught that on film. It would totally be worth the drive.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
you know damn well we'd be traveling armed. Now, whether it would take
Oh,
out a
yeah.
supernatural dog.
I don't check my mail unarmed. I mean, let's be realistic. Yes, I will be armed.
Well, we can't do anything without some kind of weapons with us. I mean, shoot, we couldn't go to dinner without my wife trying to sick wild turkeys on us.
I'm too old and stoved up to run from something.
Yeah. For the viewers that don't know, we Da and his wife and me and my wife, the famous Rachel from the books, went to go get dinner at the Rock and Pig Saloon from the Apex Predator books. And of course, Da and I, being who we are, we were traveling with our Glocks, and we went out to a little tourist trap little place to check things out. My wife starts calling in wild turkeys, and she managed
She
to
was
somehow
calling them in too.
she managed to somehow piss off at least 3 toms. And she goes, quit your griping. You got your Glocks. You're okay.
Well, yeah, the city of Eureka Springs might not take too kindly to us opening up on a bunch of turkeys.
I'm just sure my wife just wants the life insurance. It's okay.
Hmm.
I mean, she'll open up Steve's Pub and Grub by herself, and she takes me out.
And he says, Steve, one of these days she's going to get off a chair and poke you in the melon.
I got to be very careful because she's not that far from me right at the moment. I might be in trouble very soon. Just saying.
Folks, we're rapidly approaching the 2-hour mark, and that's usually when we start winding things up. I want to thank Mike for coming on. He has got fantastic videos over at Abnormal Investigations. He's got videos specifically on this subject, on the Girl Scout camp murders, and the detail is fantastic. You need to go over, like, and subscribe to his channel. Make sure you share his channel with people that like this kind of content, because Mike has got some fantastic content over there. Mike, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your channel before we start wrapping things up, and where to find you?
Just pretty much at Abnormal Investigations. I just look into cryptid cases, unknown animal attacks, anything that's out of the ordinary that I think that there may be, possibility of a cover up, or kind of like the Girl Scout murders, things that just were handled differently. And I believe every victim, no matter if it was something that transformed, did not transform, I believe everybody should have a voice and everybody deserves justice. I mean, at the least.
Well, this has been a fascinating story, Mike, and it's absolutely terrifying. Adding to the stuff of my nightmares. And I appreciate all the research you've done on this. And to the fans, I'd like to thank you for the attention little Kenai has gotten here. He, for whatever reason, he
does like the attention.
He is a fan of any time we get on the podcast. He thinks he's got to be involved, but he's excited to have some fans apparently.
He's got a lot of them.
Yeah, he does. He should start his own Twitter account.
Well, he had one, but unfortunately, I was too lazy to tweet more than one thing out. But yeah, he's definitely quite a little celebrity himself.
Robbie, tell us about your channel and where we can find it as well.
What's really out there, as we love to say, DAX Machina like. A lot of the same stuff we talk about here, we talk about over there. Just a little bit shorter shows. You can find us on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Like I said, a lot of the same stuff here. A few different things there, but for the most part, it's the same kind of stuff you see over here. Norm, Johnny, and I we try to record every Tuesday night and try to upload on Mondays and Fridays, but it's been kind of slack here lately with Taylor and Tyler doing their little move in. My daughter Taylor has moved in with her boyfriend, and that's our art and IT department. So I've been kind of lenient on them for not getting their duties done in a timely manner, but they do a good job. They don't charge me anything for it, so I give them a pass on those. But yeah, we got I think we got like 28 episodes. I think, isn't that right, DA? Does that sound about right? 28 episodes so far, ish.
Something like that.
So yeah, let's go check it out. We kind of focus on like evidentiary type stuff, like what could this be? Kind of eliminating, kind of like what's that show that you like, the ghost show, DA, that eliminated all the possible things. And
that was the original Ghost Hunters.
Yes. That's kind of the same take we put on. We try to say, okay, well, what could this be? And once everything's eliminated, then we go to what it maybe supernatural, cryptid, paranormal, whatever. So.
Well, folks, if you're going to go out, if you're going to do any kind of investigating, even if you're just going camping, fishing, hunting, hiking, backpacking, anything like that, you be safe. Just because you're not looking for something dangerous doesn't mean there's not something dangerous out there. You've got bears, you've got mountain lions, cougars, coyotes, wolves. There are dangerous animals out there, and probably one of the most dangerous of all is what I refer to as the greater North American meth head. You never know when you're going to walk up on an illegal grow, or you might stumble on a meth lab somebody set up out in the woods. People are dangerous. Be careful if you go out there. Make sure you take something to protect yourself with. If you're going to go out, make sure you tell somebody that's not with you where you're going to be and when you're supposed to be back. That way, if you don't come back on time, somebody knows to start looking for you and where to start. Take something to defend yourself. If you don't believe in carrying a firearm, take a knife, take a hatchet, take a backpack, take a walking stick. Take something you can defend yourself with, because you may be in places where cell phone does not work. 911 may not be there. And it kind of leads us perfectly into the segue of, don't forget that our affiliate sponsors for the show, we have Scallywag Tactical and Dark Angel Medical. Scallywag Tactical is a veteran-owned company that makes some of the finest knives I've ever had. And I mention them frequently in the books, not because they pay me to, but because they have damn good knives. Just some of the best knives I've ever had. Scallywag's a fantastic place, fantastic group, veteran-owned company. So is Dark Angel Medical, and I'm a big supporter of our veterans and veterans charities. So make sure you go over if you go over to Dark Angel Medical or Scallywag Tactical, either one. We have discount codes that are just for our viewers. If you go to Scallywag Tactical, use discount code DA Roberts 10. I'll put that up right there. Use that link right there, which is in the chat right now, and discount code DA Roberts 10 for 10% off your entire order. And that even applies to the discounted blemish blades, which I've never gotten a bad blade from the blemish blade sale. It's always been a bit damaged box, so they couldn't sell it as new. Absolutely fantastic knives, and some of them are very reasonably priced. This is my everyday carry right here, and I don't think I've ever put a stone on this knife since I got it out of the box. And I cut everything. This is my everyday carry knife, and it is still probably sharp enough to cut me to the bone without any try. The blades hold an edge amazingly well. They're fantastic blades to carry. And a knife or a hatchet is one of the most versatile tools you can possibly take with you if you're going to be in the woods. Same thing about Dark Angel Medical. Check out Dark Angel Medical, because sometimes 911 is not possible. If you're out in the woods and you don't have phone signal, 911 may not even respond at all. You might not get an emergency signal. Or if they do, you could be hours away. I mean, if you're in the deep woods, they've got to come to your location and then either hike in or send a helicopter to your location. So 911 services might be a long way away. Carry a med kit and know how to use it. Go by Dark Angel Medical. If you use that link right there, make sure you use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your entire order. If you put Team Odin or codename Wild Hunt in the comments section at your checkout, he'll add one of the Team Odin rockers to the patch. So hope you guys will go over and check them out. Again, they're both veteran-owned companies, and we are big about supporting our veteran-owned charities. So, folks, I've said this many times. I say it all the time. We don't have fans. We have friends. And we are so thrilled that you guys chose to spend your Saturday evening with us. We had a wonderful time. Mike, you are absolutely awesome, dude. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, I appreciate you having me. I was glad to be here with you guys. I loved it. It was a good show.
Well, this has
We're
been one
gonna
of
have
the
to do it
best
again
discussions
soon.
I've ever had. This is amazing. Mike, you do some amazing research, and you have you've definitely given me the stuff of nightmares for another night. I appreciate that, brother.
And folks, head over to Abnormal Investigations. It's right there on the screen. It's also in the chat. Head over there, like, share, and subscribe. Show them some love, and let's help both our channels continue to grow, because Mike's doing some outstanding videos and outstanding work out there. So let's support our content creators here that are bringing us stuff that no one else is bringing. So Mike, again, my hat's off to you, brother. You're doing a hell of a good job. We love your channel, and we are definitely going to have you back on very soon. So folks, I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend.
I enjoyed spending the night.
We definitely enjoyed having you, folks. I'm once again going to steal the quote that my friend likes to use. There are good ships and wood ships and ships that sail the sea, but the best ships are friendships, and may they always be. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope you had a wonderful evening. I know we had a great time. Mike is a fantastic guest, and we are definitely going to do this again. Again, check out his channel. Check us out every Wednesday and Friday and Saturday night at 8 p.m. And we will be going live again Wednesday. I'll have the show posted probably sometime tomorrow for everybody to prepare for. So again, thank you guys for being with us. Hope you guys have a wonderful night and the remainder of your weekend. Good night. God bless. And thank you guys so much for joining us. Good night, everybody.
Love you all. Bye.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.